All right, let's just dive right in. Look, we've all seen AI videos that are kind of cool, but there's a huge difference between impressive and truly real. Today, we are going to break down the professional workflow that gets you across that line. And spoiler alert, the secret isn't some super expensive magic bullet tool. Nope, it's a much smarter process that gets you way better results for a tiny fraction of the cost. So let's start with a big question. Why is it that after all this hype, all these incredible demos, so many of the AI videos we try to make just end up looking, well, fake? You know exactly what I'm talking about, that weird, uncanny, waxy skin look. What is the missing piece here? Well, the answer is actually a lot simpler than you might think. The single biggest mistake people make is trying to use one tool for the whole shebang. When you try to generate your images, animate them, and finalize them all in one place, you end up compromising on everything. And that's exactly where those inconsistent characters and that weird plasticky skin comes from. And this, right here, is the pro's secret. It is not about finding the one perfect tool. It's about building the perfect workflow. The goal is to create a pipeline where you use the absolute best tool for each specific job. And get this approach doesn't just give you a massive jump in quality, it can be up to 8 times cheaper. Yeah, you heard that right. Okay, so let's start building this thing out. Step 1 is the foundation for everything that comes next, the images themselves. You know the old saying, garbage in, garbage out. If you want a realistic video, you first have to create a set of high quality and, maybe most importantly, consistent source images. For this first critical step, we're going to be using Midjourney. Why? Because right now, it just hits that perfect sweet spot between realism, how fast it works, and what it costs. That's exactly what you need when you're generating a whole bunch of options for your project. So how do we actually get that all-important consistency inside Midjourney? It really boils down to a two-part trick. For the overall style and vibe, you use the mood board feature. Seriously, just think of it like giving the AI an inspiration board, and it'll follow that style. Then, for your characters, you use something called omni-reference. You feed it a picture of your character, and it makes sure that exact same person shows up in every single shot. It's amazing. Oh, and that little -dr5 command you see, that just tells Midjourney to give you more variety in the options it generates. It's an incredibly powerful combo. Okay, so we've got our consistent images, we're good to go, right? Well, not quite. This next step is the one that most people skip, and trust me, it makes all the difference in the world. We need to upres those images to get pro-level detail before we even think about animating them. And this is so important. The default images for Midjourney are actually pretty low res, and its own built-in upscaler is what's often responsible for creating that waxy, almost plastic-looking skin. If you go and animate that, you're just locking those flaws into your final video. You'll never get the realism you're looking for. Now, this slide shows you exactly why this multi-tool workflow is so powerful. You don't just use one upscaler for everything. For people, we're using Enhancer.ai. It is specifically trained to avoid that horrible waxy skin effect. But for objects or scenery, Gigapixel AI is a much better choice. It's a one-time purchase, you own the software, and you have total control. See? 2 different jobs, 2 different, and better, tools. All right, we've got our high-resolution, consistent images. Now for the main event, the animation. This is where we bring it all to life, and believe me, the tool we choose here is absolutely critical. This chart pretty much tells you everything you need to know. You look at the big players, you see the compromises. Runway and Luma can look pretty muddy. Google's new V3 model has some amazing physics, but it's stuck at 720p, which is a deal breaker. But then, look at Seedance. It nails all 3. The realism is excellent, it's native 1080p, and it costs about 60 cents a pop. For this workflow, it's a no-brainer. And here's another huge advantage. If you've messed around with other tools, you know how frustrating that 4-second limit is. It's so restrictive. Seedance gives you up to 12 seconds. That opens up a world of possibilities for more creative camera moves and longer action sequences. So, how do you get the best results out of Seedance? Well, once you're in and you upload your high-res image, the name of the game is specificity. Here's a little pro tip for you. Structure your prompt by defining the camera shot first. For example, a smooth dolly shot moving left. Then, describe what your character is doing. This gives the AI a really clear framework to build on, and you'll get much better results. Okay, so at this point, we have a fantastic-looking 1080p video clip. And honestly, we could totally stop here and be happy. But if we're really aiming for that truly professional cinematic finish, there is one last step to take. And that final step is a 4K upscale using a tool called Topaz Video AI. This is where we take our great 1080p clip and transform it into a crisp, ultra-high-definition final product that's going to look amazing on any screen. Now pay attention because the settings here are everything. You're going to want to choose the 4K preset and use the Proteus AI model. It's their best all-arounder. But here's the single most important tip for this whole step. Set Recover Detail to 0. I'm serious. This feature tries to digitally sharpen things, but it almost always adds these weird, unnatural-looking artifacts. Turn it off. And finally, set your frame rate to 24 frames per second to get that classic cinematic motion. We've got our polished 4K clip. But there's one last little touch. It's optional, but I highly recommend it, that can really sell the whole illusion. A subtle layer of film grain. It does two things. First, it helps blend all your different AI shots together seamlessly. And second, it gets rid of that sterile, too-perfect digital look. It just makes it feel organic. And this is so easy to do in basically any video editor. You just drag a film grain clip on top of your footage, change the blending mode to overlay, which basically just makes the gray parts disappear, and then you just knock the opacity down to around 30%. You're just going for a subtle texture, not some heavy filter. And that's it. That is the entire process. We've gone all the way from a simple text prompt to a polished, hyper-realistic 4K video clip. So let's recap the whole toolchain one last time. We start with Midjourney for the images, using a specialized upscaler like Enhancer.ai or Gigapixel for that critical detail. Then we animate with Seed Dance. Give it the 4K polish with Topaz Video AI, and add a final touch of film grain to bring it all together. Each tool is the best at its one specific job, and that creates a final result that no single all-in-one tool could ever hope to match. Look, what this workflow really does is just tear down the technical walls between your idea and a truly realistic final product. The tools are here, you now have the process, so the only question left is the one that really matters. What story are you going to tell?